earlier this week, Microsoft surprised us with the announcement of the Xbox Series X hardware with specifications including a CPU with 8 Zen 2 cores and with integrated graphics that outperforms a single Radeon RX 5700 XT by quite a margin. Now it is finally time for Sony to reveal their hardware specs for PS5, and we're looking at tons of performance, and it turns out PS5 and Xbox Series X are going to be very different systems, with Sony focusing on cutting-edge SSD tech over raw GPU power that Microsoft seem to be doubling down on. Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to RB Hardware. My name is Robin. I'm your Swedish host and friend with bad posture and poor accent. According to Sony PlayStation system architect Mark Cerny, the big news for PS5 is the SSD flash-based storage, first and foremost, not really the powerful graphics and the processor, although these are also important. And the reason for this is that a mechanical hard drive has for a long time been a bottleneck that developers constantly having to work around, something that's been holding back the game development. And in this PS5 presentation, Cerny showed that a PS4 mechanical hard drive needs about 20 seconds to load 1 GB of data, and in comparison, PS5 equipped with an SSD can load twice as much data in just 0.27 seconds. And so again, PS5 can load twice as much data, 2 GB, in less than half a second, in comparison to PS4 that takes 20 seconds to load 1 GB of data. And so the difference is huge, and the massive gain of speeds opens up completely new possibilities in addition to eliminating loading times. And other concrete examples Sony mentions here are streaming, and not at least games that take place in open worlds where the detail and number of different objects in the current state are limited by the mechanical hard drive. And Cerny also talks about other benefits. With the mechanical hard drive, all critical data must be loaded into this system memory, but with an SSD device, the textures and data needed can be loaded continuously during the game, and this means greater turning space for developers, and in practice, more primary memory available for them to use for more useful stuff. And the SSD controller circuit is a natively creation of Sony and has a total of 12 channels which are connected to the NAND memory, and this allows PS5 to reach speeds up to 8 to 9 GB per second, which is almost double as stand against 4.8 for Microsoft with their promise with Xbox Series X. And speaking of storage, Sony is equipping PS5 with 825 GB of storage, and for those who need even more storage, Sony says that SSDs are expensive, which also limits the capacity of the device they deliver. In other words, if they would have gone with 1 TB storage, the PS5 would probably been a lot more expensive as a result. But the company says that they will support standard M.2 SSD devices, and so you can simply just toss out the SSD and change it out to something bigger if you want to. But this comes with a but. The SSD you decide to install needs to be at least as fast as the device in the PS5, and it has to be certified by Sony, and a list of certified units will be released later in the year. At this point, there are plenty of PS4 users out there, including me, and as we were expecting, PlayStation 4 games will become compatible with PlayStation 5, and these games do not need to be installed on the SSD, and instead they can be housed in an external SSD if you want to, and you can simply just connect this to your PS5 over a USB connection. And the system circuit or system on chip is once again developed in collaboration with AMD, and the graphics selection is based on the company's upcoming architecture Radeon DNA2 or RDNA2, and is similar to Microsoft upcoming Series X with special customizations. And although RDNA2 is developed by AMD, there are differences between RDNA2 and the older GCN architecture that is sitting inside PS4, which means that Sony has to ensure that every game works, and this is going to be a game-by-game certification as it seems. And according to Cerny, almost all top 100 games played on PS4 should work at launch for the PS5, but there will be a few games lacking support at launch, but those will be fully playable a bit after launch, Cerny confirms. Now, Sony PlayStation 5, like Xbox Series X, will also support ray tracing, and for Sony will be the same method as we see in the PC space. And so this is the same method that AMD will be using with upcoming graphics cards, and including big NAVI of course. And every compute unit is receiving so-called intersection engines, which accelerates the ray tracing, and this is the equivalent equivalent to what Nvidia refers to as an RT core. And as for the graphics selection of the console, we're getting 36 compute units, and this is the same number that we find in the PS4 Pro, but with the architecture RDNA 2 and more than doubling in clock frequency, and it will provide the theoretical computational power of 10.28 teraflop, and that is a bit below Xbox Series X, which is getting 12 teraflops. Now, big difference from Xbox Series X is that Sony is not locking the clock frequencies on the processor or the graphics section. Sony is instead using something called variable clock frequencies, and in the PC world this is what we call turbo frequencies, and that is something that we find on every graphics card and every CPU out there. Because games are created differently depending on the gaming title, either the processor core or the graphics can be the bottleneck, and to optimize for this, Sony uses AMD's new technology for laptops called Smart Shift, which allow the CPU and the GPU to dynamically give one or another a portion of their power budget when it doesn't need it, and this is to keep the temperatures in place basically. And speaking of the processor, on the CPU side, yes, we're getting an 8-core Zen 2 based processor with support for multi-threading for a total of 16 threads, and all cores have a dynamic clock frequency of 3.5 GHz. This is a dynamic clock frequency, which means that it can vary quite a lot. In comparison, Xbox Series X is getting a fixed clock frequency of 3.6 GHz with SMT enabled, and the CPU inside Xbox Series X can go all the way up to 3.8 GHz if developers chooses to turn SMT or hyperthreading off. Now, the PlayStation 5 will also feature a custom hardware that they built with AMD that they're calling Tempest 3D Audio Tech, and the system will not feature Dolby Atmos support as Sony had their own goals for 3D audio, and Sony is working on delivering 3D audio with all sound systems and not just Dolby Atmos. And Sony actually talks about sound as one of the counterstones for the next generation of gaming consoles, and Sony was spending tons of time talking about the 3D sound and how sound travels between the users to ears, whereupon several sound sources increase realism but also the cost of computational power, of course. And Mark Cerny also paints several challenges with the sound technology, not least the fact that everyone's gaming corners look a bit differently. Now, the problem Cerny talks about is that the phenomenon of 3D sound is difficult to understand for those who haven't experienced it, and he therefore sees this as an educational challenge ahead of him, but he believes that in the long term this will be one of many features in PS5 that will take gaming to the next level. Sadly, at this presentation, they didn't show us the actual look of the system or any games or release date, and Mark Cerny promises that there will be lots of updates later this year, and they will share more details as time goes on. And so it seems like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are going to be very different systems, with Sony focusing on cutting-edge SSD tech over CPU and GPU power. And there are lots of explanation why. I'll link up a video down below if you're interested why Sony is only fitting PS5 with just 36 compute units. There is actually a good reason for it. Guys, what do you think about PS5 so far? Now, I'm obviously going to keep you guys up to date here. Now watch these two videos for more content, and I will see you guys over there.